Today we start chapter 14 of the Bhagwad Gita. Chapter 14's title is Gun Traya Vibhag Yog, or the Yoga of distinction of the three gunas. But before we start the chapter, as has been our tradition, we will recap as to why we are reading the Bhagavad Gita and what is Bhagavad Gita. So, introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita comprises the philosophical kernel of our great epic, Mahabharata. It is one of the most famous and well-known spiritual texts in the world, and it consists of 700 verses of the 1 lakh verses of Mahabharata. Conservatively written somewhere between 5th to the 2nd century BC. Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Lord Krishna, God incarnate, and Arjun, the mighty Kshatriya warrior. Now, Bhagavad Gita is a universal philosophy which applies to all mankind across the board. So, all humans everywhere, be it India, America, Africa, it doesn't matter. What it's telling us is applicable to all humans. The setting of the text is very important. It is set in the middle of a battlefield between two warring factions who are actually cousins. I mean, both the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they are cousins, they are related also, but they are against each other in the battlefield. So it also represents the conflict of a person's positive and negative nature. So, we all are a very interesting combination of some of the best qualities, the noblest qualities. It is we who run charities and help individuals. But we also have some terrible qualities. It is we who look forward to jumping a queue or not standing in a queue or not following a process. So, how both the good and the bad qualities exist in the same person is incredible. It's like the divine and the devil coexisting. So, Bhagavad Gita, being set in such kind of an environment or a setting, tells us how to work on our negative qualities, refine our mind and thoughts, and build up on our positives. So, in short, it is telling us how to live life by identifying the best in us and backing these qualities. So, if we look around us in creation, it is only the human beings who are different. And why are we different? Because we have this power of a choice. See, the rest of the nature works as if it was pre-programmed. So in the springtime, the flowers will bloom. In summers, they will die out. In autumns, leaf will fall. So on and so forth. So the nature functions as if it was pre-programmed, and so to the animals. So because we have a choice, we should build upon our choice and try to understand that how by exercising this choice, I become a human being, how it makes me different from animals, and what is the purpose of a human life. And see, we all face challenges. Life is a combination of good and bad, critics and admirers, right and wrong, honor and dishonor. We all face them. Bhagavad Gita tells us how to handle them, how to move through life in this pair of opposites. Instead of simply blaming the family, the spouse, the boss, the environment, it tells us how to live life, face challenges, and be happy in and through all of this. Now, to do that, we first need to understand what are we? What are we made of? What is our nature? So once we understand ourselves, then we can interact in a more proactive manner with things external to us. So with the world, and face its challenges. Also, Bhagavad Gita tells us that it is only we that we can change. We should not even seek to change the world. The world will be as it is. How should I work on myself to change myself so that I am better equipped to meet and face the world? Once we understand this, everything improves for us. So, Bhagavad Gita actually introduces us to ourselves. The first word of the Bhagavad Gita is dharma, and the last word of the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita is mam. So, which means my dharma. So, the entire 700 verses are within that realm of what is my essence. So, dharma or essence is that which makes me me, which is my true nature. So, if I'm not that, I am not a human being. So it's like sugar is sweet. The essence of sugar is sweetness. You will never have bitter sugar. You cannot have, you will not call it sugar. Similarly, the essence of fire is heat. You will never have a cold fire. Fire will always be hot. So that is the essence. So Bhagavad Gita tells us our essence, our nature. What is it that makes me me, and without which I am not what I am? Or what is my dharma? Most importantly, Bhagavad Gita is a manual for existence. It talks at the level of the common man. People like Arjun was a great Kshatriya warrior, but he was a man of action. So most of us are caught up in the world, and we have not reached that stage of spirituality where we have given up all our desires, and we have purified, sublimated our vasanas. We are not that level. We are very much in the world. We are working in the world. We are meeting our goals, targets, etc. So, in and through that, Bhagavad Gita is like a manual for existence. So, see, just like when you buy a new vehicle or a new appliance, you run through the instruction manual for the gadget. So you understand how do I open the boot, how do I set the speed limit on my car, how do I start the wipers, where is the box which contains water for cleaning the wipers, etc., etc. Where is the child lock? So you start to read all those things. And then you start, I mean, it'll be better if you start operating the vehicle or the gadget. So the instruction manual for the gadget is actually telling us how to use the appliance, how to troubleshoot, and how to maintain it, right? At what time, frequencies are the services due, and so on and so forth. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita tells us about ourselves. It educates us on how to be human, how to choose rightly, how not to succumb to desire, and be cheerful in and through all of this, so that we become more accepting of ourselves. Even with our negativities, we are more accepting of ourselves, and not only ourselves, both our profits and losses, our gains and losses, we accept. So some things I win, some things I don't win. So yesterday, if you watch the match, Medvedev lost. It's okay. I mean, so it tells us how to be like that sports person. So it's not that Medvedev will not play the next Wimbledon or next tennis match. A sports person always bounces back from any loss, does not roll down the floor like a rubber ball, like a lead ball. It bounces back like a rubber ball. So Bhagavad Gita tells us this technique. So it gives us the technique of right action, which when applied across all our endeavors. So, even if it's a very, very worldly endeavor to gain wealth or to gain power, if we do it in the spirit of what Bhagavad Gita tells us, we will succeed in our endeavors. So, Bhagavad Gita is a unique package that offers the technique of right action for success in life cheerfully. So, these 3 points: right action, success in life, and cheerfulness. Also, as we read the Bhagavad Gita and as we have been covering the chapters, there are certain eternal laws or principles that come our way. So, the law of karma, birth and death, so those are there. We understand what now that it means. also, these are more relevant for the younger generation. And therefore, it is my request that you transmit as much of this knowledge that you gain in maybe more interesting manner to the youngsters, because they need to understand uh, how to act in the world, how to relate to the world. So the school curriculum or the university curriculum that we do, or the academics, teaches us only what we can give back or exchange in this world. Or it's a barter system. We give back that knowledge and earn some money, which we use for something, purchasing something else. So that knowledge, academics, helps us earn a living only. It is important, but that is where the value of our academic education ends. It does not tell us our real purpose in life. And that is what Bhagavad Gita tells us, that what is permanent, that will stay with us, which is the spiritual knowledge. What is our purpose in life? What is my true worth? Am I worth this 1 crore that I'm getting every month in my account, or from as a salary, as a is that my true worth, or am I more than that? Then it tells us how to live life completely. So when we are interacting, that interaction is complete, joyful, and cheerful, and we are absorbed in it. We enjoy it. Similarly, when we are cooking for the family, we are doing, enjoying it completely. When we are working for our company, we give it our best. So it teaches us how to find happiness and bliss within ourselves as we continue to function in the world. So 18 chapters that we have been, we have covered 13 of them. So I'll just read out the chapters so that we know the contextually the part. So the first one was Arjun Vishad Yoga, or Yoga of Arjun's despondency, where after seeing the warring sides, he says, I cannot find this battle because I see both kith and kin on either side. So how can I ever think of getting any benefits by killing my own loved ones? So that was Yoga of Arjun's despondency, chapter 1. Chapter 2 was Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. This was a longish chapter, 72 verses, where the entire knowledge was given by the Lord. But because Arjun was not in a state of mind to absorb the knowledge, therefore, from chapter 3 onwards, actually, Arjun starts asking questions and the Lord starts responding to those questions. So he is just elaborating or detailing what was covered in chapter 2. So chapter 3 was the Karma Yoga, yoga of action, where the technique of right action was brought to us, which was the core of the chapter. Chapter 4 was Gyan Karma Sannyas Yoga, or the yoga of renunciation of action and wisdom, which talked of the 12 yajanas. So basically, how the action is to be done in the spirit of service and sacrifice and for a higher goal. Then we moved on to chapter 5, which was Karma Sannyas Yoga, or the yoga of renunciation of action. So how working in that manner, in the yajna manner, we start renouncing, or we do not, the attachment to the action goes, the actions continue, but the attachment to that action goes, and we start renouncing, and then we are prepared for thinking or meditating upon God. And that is detailed in chapter 6, Dhyan Yoga, yoga of meditation, where our mind is not so turbulent, it's not seeking the world that much. So we are able to free it up to think of the Lord. So this was the first set of 6 verses, which talked more about ourselves, our body, our thoughts, etc. Chapter 7 to chapter 12 broadly talks about the nature of Brahm, or that God that we are trying to think of or contemplate upon. So chapter 7 was Gyan Vigyan Yoga, or yoga of knowledge and wisdom, and how the wise people seek God. Akshar Brahm Yoga talked about the attributes of God. So, and how do we reach God? and we talked about the path of return and no return. So one in which we merge with God, and in the other path, we continue with the cycle of birth and death. So this was covered in chapter 8, the yoga of imperishable Brahman. Chapter 9 was Rajvidya, Rajguhya Yoga, or the yoga of royal knowledge and royal secret. So again, telling us about that Brahman. Then chapter 10 was Vibhuti Yoga, where Brahman is revealed as the source of the manifest world. And then on Arjun's request, chapter 11 was the Vishrup Darshan Yoga, the yoga of the vision of the cosmic form, where the oneness of Brahman in all that is moving and non-moving in the world was revealed by various methods. So this was a very brilliant chapter. Chapter 12 was a small chapter, which was Bhakti Yoga. It's the shortest chapter of the Bhagwad Gita, only 20 verses. So Bhakti Yoga, or Yoga of Devotion. It is important because it clearly enunciates what is meant by bhakti, and we talked of form bhakti, a form bhakti or formless bhakti, and the 5 stages of bhakti, and we talked of the 35 qualities of the bhakta. Now, chapter 13 that we just finished was the Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga, or the yoga of distinction between field and knower of the field. I will take this up in slight more detail before we move on to chapter 14, because we are building upon that chapter 13 in chapter 14. So see, in the chapter 13, Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga, or the yoga of distinction between field, which is Kshetra, and knower of the field, which is Kshetragya. We discovered, as we read, we found it slightly difficult. It was very, very different from the other chapters that we had read in the Bhagavad Gita so far, because it was extremely logical and rational, as it clearly demarcated matter from non-matter, or matter from spirit, and also defined the process where we reach the spirit, self, Atman. So you may recollect that the chapter started by Arjun asking, what is Prakriti, matter, Purush, spirit, Kshetra, field, Kshetragya, knower of the field, Gyan, knowledge, and Geyam, that which ought to be known. So these were the 6 terms that Arjun had asked in that chapter, in the previous chapter. So the Lord has started explaining the difference between Kshetra, which is the field or body or matter, and Kshetragya, which is the knower of the field. It is not the field. So my body is part of the field, but my soul, which knows the body, is different from the field. So this is what Krishna had started explaining. Then we had covered the 24 factors of the Kshetra, and we covered 7 modifications of the Kshetra. So we talked of 31 factors which constitute the Kshetra. And then the Lord explained to us that there is only one knower of the field, which is the Brahman. So in and through all our Jivatmas, we are actually all connected to the Brahman. So there is only one knower of the field. And then we had talked about the 20 qualities of the wise or the Jnani. And these qualities are actually built upon the 35 qualities of the Bhakta, which we had talked in chapter 12. So the 20 qualities of the wise reduce the importance of the kshetra in the field, or the field, because we are trying to attain the Atman. So we have to get rid of the field, things which are irrelevant. So it told us how to uncover the material layers of the kshetra from the kshetragya, or the body or the material layers from the knower of the field, so that we can focus on the truth. Then we talked about the nature of God and how it is undivided. Yet it appears to be divided as we see the world around us. And then Lord Krishna explained to us what is knowledge, that pure consciousness, Gayam, that which ought to be known. So again, that absolute knowledge which takes us to the pure consciousness, that is Gayam, and Gyan Gamyam, or the goal of knowledge. So which is the culmination of all our knowledge or all our knowledges. So that was explained to us. And then we covered Prakriti, which is matter, and Purush, spirit, that which enlivens matter. And we also discussed how both are beginningless, and Prakriti. These are important now pointers that we covered there, that Prakriti or matter is the cause of play of the cause and effect that we see in the world. Prakriti consists of the three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva, which we are going to actually read in detail in the current chapter. Then Purush is the cause of pleasure and pain that we experience. And Purush enlivens the three gunas of Prakriti as it manifests them. And all actions belong to the gunas of Prakriti. Gunas, we must understand, belong to Prakriti, and or they are part of the material layer or the kshetra. They are not part of the spirit or the Purusha. Then in the chapter we covered that all form of life that exists is born of the union of the kshetra, that is the material layer, and kshetragya, knower of the field or the consciousness. So the seeker, the wise person who knows Purush, spirit, Prakriti, matter, together with the gunas, which are part there in the material realm, they know, and how these interact with each other. So spirit, matter, and gun, how they interact with each other, that person knows the supreme. And then the choice of paths was presented before us in the previous chapter, the path of action for the energetic, and the path of knowledge for the rational. Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, was implied and was covered in detail actually in the previous chapter, chapter 12. And then we read that how one who sees God as the common factor, the common principle, the oneness principle, abiding equally in all beings, or that undying principle in the dying beings, that wise person, through the eyes of wisdom, which has been gained through knowledge, attains Brahman. So that was what we have done so far. And this chapter, Gun Triya Vibhag Yog, chapter 14 of the Bhagwad Gita, the title translates to the yoga of distinction of the three gunas. So the name itself tells us that we are going to talk at the level of the matter or the material layers, because gunas are part of the Prakriti. So basically we'll be covering in this chapter how the beings are generated, the distinct nature of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and how the gunas bind the beings to the world. That means they are the cause of future births and deaths in the world. But one who transcends the guna, that means rises above the gunas, becomes one with Brahman. So this is what we are going to cover in this chapter. And with that, let us start with verse 1 of the chapter. I will chant. Shri Bhagavan Uvachah Param Bhuya Pravakshami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yagyatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhi Mito Gataha. So the verse starts, the chapter starts with, the Lord said, I will again declare to you that supreme knowledge, the best of knowledges, having known which all the sages have gone from here to ultimate perfection. So let's take this up word by word. Shri Bhagwan Uvach, the Lord, the Blessed Lord said, Param, supreme, Bhuya, again, Pravakshami, will declare. I is implied, so Pravakshami becomes I will declare. Gyan is knowledge, so Jnana Nam becomes of knowledges. Jnanam, knowledge. Uttamam, best, supreme. Yat, which, Gyatva, having known. Munaya, Muni is a sage, so Munaya is the plural, sages. Sarve, all. Param, to that ultimate. Siddhim is perfection. So Param Siddhim becomes to that ultimate perfection. Itah, from here. Gata, gone. Gati is speed, Gata is gone. So the verse translates to, the Lord said, I will again declare to you that supreme knowledge, the best of knowledges, having known which all the sages have gone from here to that ultimate perfection. So let's chant it together. Shri Bhagavanuvachaha Param Bhuya Pravakshami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yajñatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhimito Gataha. So see what we have learnt so far in chapter 13, that the essence, bilkul executive summary is what I'm now quoting in front of you, that the enlivening principle is Atman. It is the same in all the beings, and the matter is also the same. So Prakriti is all the same. So whatever you study in your chemistry, the periodic table, we are all composed of the same elements as far as the material layer is concerned, or the Panch Mahabhut, the five great elements. So the spirit is the same and the matter is the same in all beings. That is the gist of chapter 30. And we also learned that this same spirit, the same Purusha, functioning through these different beings, appears to be different. See, the point is that the enlivening force is the same, the matter is the same. But when they combine and what is created, it appears to be different. It has different qualities. No two individuals are the same. It's like, you have electrical bulbs. So the bulbs function on electricity and they function on the same electrical principle, that of resistance in the filament, right? But these days, when you go to the market, there is an infinite variety of bulbs. They have different shapes, they give different light. So you'll have a cool white, you'll have a white, you'll have a warm white, and you'll have a yellow light, right? And then they will have different intensities, 0 watt bulb, 5 watt bulb, 7 watt, 10 watt. So this is just the same thing, the electrical principle and the electricity. It can give rise to so many kinds of bulbs. And why is this difference happening in the bulbs? It is because of the texture of the filament. The thicker the filament, the lesser the light. The finer the filament, the more the light. Because then the resistance in the filament is less, most of the electricity is converted to light. Exactly the same thing is happening in us. And what is it that is making us different individuals is the theme of this chapter. And the Lord is saying that I will again explain the supreme knowledge. Again, Bhuya. Again, I'm explaining to you the same, this supreme knowledge. We covered it in detail in the previous chapter, but if you recollect, glimpses of this knowledge were given to us from chapter 3 onwards. And of course, chapter 2, the entire knowledge was actually given to us. So the Lord is saying that again, I will repeat this knowledge to you. Again is very important, because repetition is essential to elucidate and impress comprehensively such a subtle subject as the ultimate knowledge or the Brahma Gyan. Like, even just for reading the Bhagwad Gita, we always recap again and again at the start of every chapter as to the importance, the significance of Bhagwad Gita, right? Similarly, this knowledge, which is the most subtle knowledge, needs a lot of repetition so that it settles with us and we understand. Now, this verse is actually the index for the chapter or the theme for the chapter. So, what is it saying? The supreme knowledge that is better than all other knowledges. That is what we are going to cover. And what will happen is, having known which, all sages have attained the highest. That means they have left the layers of the body. It's not that, they're not existing in the body, but they have removed the attachment to these material layers. So this is what we are going to talk about in this particular chapter in detail. And we must understand, as I mentioned when we were recapping as to why the significance of Bhagavad Gita, that all are academics. So all sciences, arts, politics, law, whatever it is, they are not knowledges, but pieces of information which is strung together to come to a theory or come to a conclusion. They are actually incomplete. They're one-sided. One-sided in the sense, they reflect only as much as being used for that particular principle that we arrive at. There is no perfection in them. And that is why you find that everything is changing. The science changes, the kind of mobiles that we used, or the phones, communication systems that we have been using over the centuries. In fact, in front of ourselves, in our lifetime, we have seen such a variation in the science that we see around us, the applied science. In medicine, we see so much of change. There's no perfection in them, because a new theory will appear, if it will overtake, which will be more efficient in certain ways, it'll overtake the old one. So there is no finality in this knowledge in the academics. They all relative and they're subject to change. And even the research scholars actually work only on bits of information that they are trying to piece together in different ways. Okay. So now that the Webb telescope is sending these amazing pictures of galaxies merging and so on and so forth, we think, oh, it's happening for the first time. It must have been happening for years. It's just that we now have the evidence that it happened. So when we spend, 20 to 24 years on an average learning, whatever we learn in our academic curriculum of the school, colleges, universities, even the professional trainings, is encashed in the world for better standard of living and gaining worldly acquisitions. None of this knowledge is permanent. In fact, even if we, maybe soon we'll be living on Moon or maybe Mars, at least all the physical laws will have to undergo a change, and maybe some of our chemical laws will also have to undergo a change based on the chemicals and the forces that are applicable on, let's say, Mars or on Moon. So none of this knowledge is permanent. It is relative. On Earth, the gravity is so much. On Moon, it's 1/8 of the gravity of the Earth. So all this is relative. It changes. And even in the world, even with all our acquisitions, it does not really give us the remedy to face the pairs of opposites that all of us encounter day in and day out. Happiness is not residing in my Mercedes or, whichever car I have. It is within me. And I need to connect to that spirit instead of connecting it with a vehicle or any other source. I mean, a big house or a mansion, it's not there. Ask the person who's living in the mansion. The person is always complaining about the maintenance issues and help and so on and so forth. So we are going to talk of the knowledge that is the knowledge of all knowledges, from which all other knowledges emanate. It is the ultimate knowledge. And the knowledge of the truth or the pure consciousness is the highest knowledge that is available to mankind. And this knowledge gives us great strength and courage, because we realize that all that we are seeking in and through the various uh, you know matter in the world, I mean, so a car, a mansion, property, power, it's actually within us. It's our inherent nature. And then we realize the stupidity of seeking it in the world. I mean, so this weekend you'll have the Wimbledon final, someone will win the match, will have the trophy, it's there only for a year. I mean, next year again that person has to worry as to whether he will retain it or not. The other person would want to have it, so on and so forth. So this knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, saves us from the imperfection and the transiency nature of all that we encounter in the world. And we start understanding the tremendous mystery of our own personality, the capability of ourselves, the immense capability, and then the potential gradually is unfolded in front of us. The process was, of course, covered in the previous chapter. The previous chapter referred to this knowledge as Geyam, or the real knowledge, or that which ought to be known. That which all of us should know in this life, and which is the culmination of all our knowledges, or Gyan. So Gyan refers to this knowledge, and Geyam to the supreme knowledge, or the knowledge of the self. So it is only the spiritual knowledge or the knowledge of the self that is the highest knowledge. And then the verse goes on to say that knowing this knowledge, the Munis or the sages of yesteryears went from here, from where we are, to the highest perfection, to that Brahman. So it is the ultimate knowledge and experience where the experiences, all our experiences culminate, all our existence culminates, and it is the ultimate goal that we can have. And when we say here, it does not mean only death. It also means leaving the present state of experiences, which is conditioned by our ego, essentially. So I did that, I'm experiencing this happened to me. So it's all I. So our ego, once we leave that, so right here and right now, we can experience that divinity. We will reach that divinity. Or in other words, the knowledge of the God transforms us humans into a divine being. And then we are no longer a limited entity. We discover a larger existence. So this knowledge frees us from change, which is the phenomenon of this world. And change is also birth and death. The cycle of birth and death is also actually part of that change that we experience. So this knowledge awakens us from the world and takes us to the highest. The best example is that you are you're dreaming of something. So the dream is progressing, and it could be a nightmare or it could be a pleasant dream. And so you might be getting hassled in the dream. But once you wake up, you say, oh, how stupid of me. That was just a dream. You're not dreaming anymore. You are awake now. So the dream is gone. So that is exactly what this knowledge does to us. It awakens us, and we move from one plane of consciousness to a much higher plane. So that is what verse number 1 was. Moving on to verse number 2, I will chant. Idam jnanamupashritaya mam sadharmaya magata sarge pinopajayante pralayena vyathanti cha. So the verse translates to, having taken refuge in this knowledge and having attained unity with me, neither are they born, even in creation, nor disturbed in dissolution. So let's take this up word by word. Idam, this, jnanam, knowledge, upashrite is taking refuge, mam, my, sadharmayam. So dharm is your nature. So my sadharmayam becomes unite with my nature, with God's nature, right? Agata, having attained, sarge, in what is created, in creation, api, even, na, not, upjayante. Upjana is being born, So upjayante are born, pralay, at the time of dissolution, na, not, vyathanti, व्यथित होते हैं or are disturbed, cha, and. So the verse translates to, having taken refuge in this knowledge and having attained unity with me, neither are they born, even in creation, nor disturbed in dissolution. So let's chant it together. Idam jnanamupashritayah mam sadharmayamagata sarge pinopajayante pralayana vyathanti cha. So what the Lord is saying is simple. The sages possessing this knowledge merged with me, became my nature. They assumed the state of godhood. And this union with the Lord liberated them from birth and death. So there is no return for such a person. So the effects of this wisdom are that the seeker attains union with God, and the seeker is not born at the time of creation and does not die at the time of dissolution. Or the wise person who has this knowledge is beyond the cycle of birth and death, or becomes birthless and deathless. So you may recollect in the Akshar Brahm Yoga chapter, we had talked about the microcosmic and the macrocosmic cycles of creation and dissolution. So the phenomenon of Kalp and Pralay, which was a cycle of creation and dissolution of the world. And for the wise one, these cycles do not have any meaning. The term that our scriptures use is punarapi jananam, punarapi marnam. So that stops, this cycle stops. And seeker is one with the absolute. So, it's just like the ocean example, if we take, the wave is nothing but the ocean actually. So it comes out of the ocean and it falls, it expresses itself also in ocean because it's water which is expressing itself, and it merges back into the ocean. So similarly, we arise from God, express ourselves in God, and merge back into God. But the wise one transcends this world of change and becomes the ocean itself, or becomes God. So with that, we will close today's session.